Hi everybody. In this video I will be discussing about capacitors and the equations related to capacitors from the JEE Mains and JEE Advanced point of view. If you think capacitors is tough for you, then do stick with me up till the end of this video, and I can assure you that capacitors will be much easier for you than what it currently is. So now comes the first thing, that what are capacitors? A capacitor is something which stores electrical charges. Well, this is where a bell rings in your mind, and you end up asking me that then what's the difference between a battery and a capacitor? See, when it comes to a battery has some chemicals stored inside it, and these chemicals are going to react with each other and ultimately give you the formation of electrons. These electrons are going to flow in the external circuit, and that is what gives you the formation of a current. So a current, because of a battery, when you get a current, that current is being obtained because of a chemical reaction which is taking place inside a battery. Inside a capacitor there are no chemicals, it is just electrical charges which are getting stored in the capacitor. I'll show you precisely how they work. Two parallel lines are the notation that we use for showing a capacitor in a circuit. So let's say I'm connecting a capacitor along with a battery. That's the positive terminal of your battery, and what the positive terminal will do is it will start snatching electrons from the left hand side plate of the capacitor. So when the battery starts taking out electrons from the left hand side plate, the left hand side plate of the capacitor will develop a positive charge. Now whatever electrons the battery has taken, it will pass on these electrons from the negative terminal to the other plate. So the other plate, because it gets electrons, it is going to develop a negative charge. Say for example, the first plate develops a charge of plus 5 coulomb because the electrons were taken from it. The negative plate, because whatever electrons were taken from this plate, all of them will be given by the battery to the negative plate. So if this develops a charge of plus 5 coulomb, this will develop an equivalent amount of negative charge, which is, let's say, minus 5 coulomb. So that is how you get the separation of charges inside a capacitor. Once we achieve this, we disconnect the battery. Now we have a capacitor which is having some charges stored on the left hand side and the right hand side plate. So this is how we say that a capacitor is storing an electrical charge. Say for example, we want some kind of an electric current through a resistor or through an appliance. So what we do is we connect that appliance with the capacitor. And now the negative charges are having a path to flow through the resistor and connect with the positive charges here. So the negative charges, the electrons, are going to flow through the resistor and get combined with the positive charges right here, and that is what gives us the formation of current or the generation of current because of a capacitor. Okay, so that is how a capacitor essentially works. All in all, what I want you to understand over here is the fact that a capacitor is something which is used for storing electrical charges, and this is how it stores electrical charges. An obvious question in your mind at this point of time would be that when the resistor was not connected, what was stopping the negative charges from combining with the positive charges right here? See, whenever electric current wants to flow or whenever charge wants to flow, it needs a conducting path through which it can flow. Without a wire, without a metallic wire, you cannot have the formation of current. Okay, let's not call it metallic, but you need a conducting path for the charge to flow from one point to the other point. The space in between the two plates that I've taken will be filled with an insulator, and because the space here is filled with an insulator, there is no path for the negative charges here to flow towards the positive charges and get combined with them. The moment you connected a resistor, you offered the negative charges here a path to get combined with the positive charges right here, and because you gave them a path, they started getting recombined with the positive charges on the other side. Without a path, that wouldn't happen, and we ensure that there's no path by giving an insulator in the middle. So by now you might have understood that a capacitor would look like this. A capacitor is two parallel plates. The two parallel plates are filled with an insulator in between them. So there's an insulator in between them. That insulator is what we call dielectric. I am calling it an insulator because I need you to understand that this insulator or this medium is something which does not allow the electrical charges to flow from one plate to the other within the capacitor. Of course they will flow, but they will flow through a path which has been given from outside the capacitor. So like I said, we call it a dielectric, which means an insulator, and these parallel plates have some kind of a path right here through which they can be connected in a circuit. So that is how a capacitor is going to look like. Now think about an equation for a capacitor. I said that I was generating charges on a capacitor by connecting it to a battery. Just think over it, okay? Say for example, the battery I took was a battery of EMF equal to 10 volt. So that was my capacitor initially neutral. This battery has a potential difference of 10 volt. Whenever I develop a charge on this plate, if I am developing a positive charge on this plate, a positive potential will get developed on this plate. If I am developing negative charges on this plate, a negative potential will get developed on this plate. Say for example, the potential I am developing on the left hand side plate is 5 volt, and the potential I am developing on the other plate is minus 5 volt. If this is plus 5, this is bound to be minus 5. If this is plus 7, this would be minus 7. Just think over it. What is the difference of potential between the two plates? The potential difference between them is 10 volt. The final potential difference that you get between the plates of the capacitor is exactly the potential difference of the battery that you have connected. So if I am connecting a battery of 25 volt, the potential difference generated between the plates will be 25 volt, with one of the plates being plus 12.5 and the other plate being minus 12.5. So all in all, I am trying to tell you that whatever is the potential difference, whatever is the EMF of the battery, that EMF of the battery will be the potential difference of the capacitor when it gets charged by that battery. Now think over it. If the potential difference of the battery is going to be higher, the charge that you are going to deposit on the plate will also be higher. Think about it, it's very logical. If the potential difference here is 10 volt, then the left one would be plus 5 and the right one would be minus 5. If this was 30 volt, the left one would be minus 15, the left one would be plus 15 and the right one would be minus 15. The potential difference is higher, then the charge developed on the plates will also be higher. So I am trying to highlight the fact that the charge developed Q on the plate of your capacitor will be proportional to the potential difference that you are generating across the plates of the capacitor. To remove the proportionality, we introduce a constant of proportionality, and that constant of proportionality is C. And that C is what we call the capacitance of a capacitor. So this is where you are learning your first formula in capacitance, that is Q is proportional to V, and because Q is proportional to V, Q will be equal to CV, where that C is the constant of proportionality called capacitance of a capacitor. Let's just make a list of all the formulae like we have been doing in all the previous videos. So the first formula Q is directly proportional to V. That tells you that Q will be equal to CV. Keep in mind that this C out here is the capacitance of your capacitor. Q was the charge that you are developing on either of the plates. So if this plate has a charge of plus Q, the other one would have a minus Q. One of them will be plus, the other will be minus. Magnitude of any one of them is what we will say is Q. And V is the potential difference that you have generated across the plates of the capacitor. Okay, so that's your first formula. Here comes my first question to you. If I talk about Q as C into V, you would actually end up telling me that C will be equal to Q by V. So my question is, does the capacitance depend upon the charge that you have deposited on the plates, or does it depend upon the potential difference that you have generated between the plates? The answer is capacitance does not depend on either of them. But then you end up asking me that we see Q and V in the formula of capacitance, then how do I say that capacitance does not depend on charge as well as potential difference? Think about density, okay? You know that density is mass upon volume. Does the density of a substance depend upon how much mass of the substance that you have taken? It doesn't. You take 5 grams of water or you take 50 grams of water, the density is going to remain 1 gram per centimeter cube. It doesn't change with mass. The density does not depend upon mass. The density does not depend upon volume of the substance that you have taken. Density is an inherent property of the material itself. Something similar goes here. The capacitance does not depend upon the charge that you have deposited or the potential difference that you have applied or generated across the plates. It's just some kind of a proportionality that will exist between the two of them. So what does capacitance depend upon? Capacitance depends upon the plate, the construction of the capacitor. So say for example, the two plates that I was talking about. Again, think of a logical point. If the area of the plate was bigger, if the plate itself was a bigger plate, I can deposit more charge on it. If the plate is tiny, I can deposit only a little limited charge on it. So the capacitance depends upon the area of the plate. That is, if the area is higher, the capacitance will be higher. It depends upon the insulating property of the material which I had taken in between. I am talking about the dielectric which is going to fill the region between the two plates of your capacitor. So the capacitance depends on, like I said, area of the plate. It depends upon the permittivity of the dielectric. So you can say epsilon. And if you remember, the dielectric constant K was given by epsilon upon epsilon naught. So instead of simply epsilon, we will prefer to write epsilon as K into epsilon naught. So instead of A into epsilon, let's write it as A K epsilon naught divided by D. D was the distance between the two plates of your capacitor. So if this was your first plate and this is the second plate of your capacitor, D is the distance between them. The formula tells you that if the plates are closer to each other, the capacitance will be higher, and if the plates are away from each other, the capacitance will be lower. Capacitance inversely depends upon the distance between the two plates. That's a formula for capacitance you need to remember. Now since we have done this formula, let's just have a look at two more variations of the same formula. We are studying the variations because whenever a question comes in JEE mains, it wouldn't be as simple as this. Okay, so let's take a capacitor. And if these were the plates, imagine it in 3D, okay? The area, this area of the plate is A, so that's the area of the plate. And let's say that the dielectric which I'm filling in the middle, okay, I shouldn't have drawn it like this, let's draw it again here. Or let's draw a bigger diagram. Yeah, that would. So let's say that the dielectric which I'm going to fill in the middle, it's a dielectric which looks like this. So it's not one dielectric which I have put in the region in between them. I have put n number of dielectrics in that region between the two plates of the capacitor. In this case, how would I write an expression for the capacitance of this capacitor? We say that the capacitance of this capacitor would be written as C is equals to C1 plus C2 plus so on up to Cn. So C1 would be the capacitance because of the first dielectric, C2 would be the capacitance because of the second, and Cn will be the capacitance because of this plate. You need to have a careful look at this. Okay, let's highlight that point a little while later. For the time being, the capacitance for this capacitor will be the addition of all the capacitances. Let's go ahead with writing C1. You know that the formula for C is AK epsilon naught upon D. What would be the area that this dielectric constant is consuming, or this dielectric is consuming? If let's say the entire area of the plate that I have just shown here, the entire area of the plate, if the entire area of the plate is A, and let's say that all these dielectrics are of equal thicknesses, then if there are n number of dielectrics, then the area corresponding to the first dielectric would be A upon n. The area that this dielectric has is this much. And if the entire area was A, this area would be A upon n. So for C1, I would say A upon n, A K epsilon naught. So K for that first medium is K1 into epsilon naught divided by D. Now D was the distance between the plates of the capacitor. So this was finally, these were the plates of my capacitor, and the distance between them is D. So what I will be writing in place of D will be D itself. Similarly for C2, if I have to write something, that would again be A upon n, because if you realize C2 is the capacitance because of the second dielectric, and the second dielectric has this area. which is the same as the previous one, that is A upon N. So I have A upon N, K2, that is the dielectric constant for the second one, epsilon naught divided by D again, and that continues up till the nth dielectric, and for the nth dielectric the expression would be A by N, Kn, epsilon naught the whole divided by D. If you pull out the common terms, you will realize that you have A, epsilon naught upon D, and you can actually have inside the bracket K1 plus K2, that continues up till Kn, the whole divided by N, and that's the final capacitance of this configuration. Okay, so if you compare this formula, you know very well that the formula for capacitance is A K epsilon naught upon D. So if I compare this formula with A K epsilon naught upon D, you realize that K equivalent for this setup would be this. So K equivalent is K1 plus K2, that goes on up to Kn divided by N, and that is the resultant dielectric constant whenever you are placing dielectric constants in this manner, or your dielectrics in this manner inside a capacitor. Okay, this is one way of rearranging the dielectrics. Before I go on with the next setup, I would want all of you to make a note of these formulae, because now I'll be rubbing out the board so that I can fit in more things here. So once you're done with this, once you are done with writing this, we'll go ahead with the next part. In the next setup, you can have your dielectrics rearranged between the two plates in this manner. So these are again your plates of the capacitor, and this time I am arranging the dielectrics in a vertical manner. So here is where I have shown you only two dielectrics. Let's say the distance between the two plates of the capacitor was D. The thickness of this dielectric is T1 and the thickness of this dielectric is T2. If you realize, the difference between this and this goes in this manner. The dielectrics are arranged parallel to the plates of the capacitor. If these were the plates, the dielectrics have been arranged parallel to the plates in the second case. But here the dielectrics, if the plates were this, the dielectrics have been arranged like this. A question in your JEE mains or advanced can actually appear in a little different manner. The capacitor plates might be this, and if they give you dielectrics arranged like this, you need to realize it is this case that they are talking about, and you need to add up the capacitances. But if the dielectric plates are these, and if the capacitor plates are these, and the dielectrics have been arranged parallel to the plates, then you need to use the formula I will be discussing now. So now, if I want to write a formula for capacitance of this capacitor, we say that capacitance C will be A epsilon naught. You remember the formula, right? It was A K epsilon naught upon D. We are just eliminating that K because that K will change. So A epsilon naught divided by D. From this D, you need to eliminate the thicknesses of your dielectrics. Your dielectrics have the thicknesses as T1 and T2. So we need to eliminate that T1 and T2. So I write minus T1 minus T2. This is only if there were two dielectrics. What if I would have had n number of dielectrics like this? In that case, I would have gone for minus of T1, T2, and that would have gone up till Tn. But you can't just eliminate them ruthlessly like this. What you need to do is you need to add T1 upon K1. Because you eliminated T1, you are bringing it in again, but in the form of T1 by K1. You will bring back T2 as well, so you will have plus T2 by K2. And that will be done for all the n dielectrics that you have. So plus Tn upon Kn. And that is what the formula for capacitance is going to look like for this setup. It would be a little difficult to remember this formula, but you don't have a choice. You need to remember this one because there are questions coming in JEE mains as well as advanced based on this formula. Now, this is a case which we can simplify it further in the form of this. Okay, so let's give you a capacitor now. And in that capacitor, I am putting in n number of plates or n number of dielectrics. The thickness of all of them are equal. So let's say that's your first dielectric of dielectric constant K1. That's your second dielectric of the K value as K2. this one has the K value as K3, that keeps on continuing, and this is the nth dielectric you have of dielectric constant equal to Kn. Okay, I need the capacitance of this capacitor. So apply the formula and tell me the capacitance for this capacitor. So C will be given by, the numerator does not change, that's A epsilon naught divided by, I have to eliminate the thicknesses of all the individual dielectrics from D. So had this been D, and if I eliminate the thickness of every dielectric, I would be left with nothing, because adding up the thickness of this plus this plus this plus this plus the nth dielectric would give me a D, and that D is what I will be eliminating from D, and I will be left with nothing after the first two terms get cancelled. But hang on, there are more terms to come. I have to introduce the first thickness as T1 by K1. What's your first thickness? If these were n number of dielectrics and the total thickness is D, the thickness of one dielectric would be D upon n. If this one would be D upon n, I would have that D upon n, which is my T1 divided by K1. That's the first term after I eliminate the two of them here. The second thickness would again be D by n divided by the dielectric constant of the second medium, which is K2, and that would keep going up till D by n upon Kn. Let's just rub out this diagram now. If you have understood the difference between this and this, so simplify that formula. You can pull out a D by n common from all the terms, and you can actually end up writing the formula for C as A epsilon naught the whole upon D by n, and in the denominator you have 1 upon K1 plus 1 upon K2, that goes on up till 1 upon Kn. So that's the formula for capacitance for this kind of a configuration or this kind of a capacitor. This is where I need you to again find an expression for K equivalent. You can compare the formula with A K epsilon naught upon D. So whatever comes in place of K is going to be your K equivalent. So if you eliminate A epsilon naught upon D, whatever is left over with you is K equivalent. So I can say that K equivalent would be 1 upon 1 by n into 1 by K1 plus 1 by K2 plus 1 upon Kn. Of course, you can write it in an easier way, that is, you can say that 1 upon K equivalent would be 1 by n into 1 by K1 plus 1 by K2 and so on up to 1 upon Kn. I am leaving it up to you. You can remember it in the way you feel it's better, but this is finally what you need to infer from the formula that you have learnt over here. So these are two very special cases that I have discussed for a capacitor. Like I said, these two formulae, these two concepts are highly important, because like I said, there are questions in JEE and JEE Mains and Advanced that have appeared from this concept. Do make a note of this formula, and once you're done with writing this, we'll go ahead with the next concept. Let's go ahead with the fourth formula. Here is where you will be learning what happens or how do you calculate the effective capacitance when you're connecting n number of capacitors in series or in parallel. Let's go ahead first with the series combination. So let's say you have n number of capacitors connected in series with a battery, and in this case what you're trying to find is the effective capacitance. Let's say the capacitance of all of them is C1, C2 and so on up to Cn. Now what this battery will do is, the positive terminal of the battery will start absorbing electrons from this plate, and because of that this plate will develop a charge of plus Q. Now if this plate develops a charge of plus Q, it will force the other plate of the capacitor to develop a charge of minus Q. But how will this develop a charge of minus Q? This plate of the capacitor will grab electrons from the plate which is adjacent to it. So because electrons from this plate are going to this plate generates a charge of minus Q, and this plate generates a charge of plus Q. Again, this plate forces the other plate to develop a charge of minus q by snatching electrons from the plate adjacent to it. So this plate develops a charge of minus q. That keeps continuing up till the last capacitor, which is right here, which is developing a charge of plus q. And now this will force the plate next to it to develop a charge of minus q by absorbing electrons from the negative terminal of the battery. So whatever electrons were absorbed by the battery from here have now been supplied to the capacitor right here, and that is what made this plate develop a charge of minus q. Let's not write all of it in a bulky way. All I am trying to establish over here is that every capacitor will develop a charge of q, and the charge on every capacitor is going to be the same. So if I have to write it in a very short format, the charge on this capacitor is q, so is the charge on this capacitor q, and the charge on this capacitor as well is equal to q. You need to understand that when I say a charge q on the capacitor, it's a charge of plus q on one plate and a charge of minus q on the other. Let's go ahead with the calculations. Let's say that the potential difference or the EMF of the battery is equal to V. Because the capacitors have been connected in series, the total EMF of the battery will be distributed over every capacitor. So a part of this EMF will be appearing on the first one. So let's say V1 volts appear on the first capacitor, V2 appear on the second, and Vn appears on the nth capacitor. And a total of all these potential differences will be the potential difference or the EMF of the battery itself. So write an equation now. I just said that the total EMF of the battery V will appear on the capacitors, and that is why this V will be equal to V1 plus V2 and so on up to Vn. If you think about the entire sequence of capacitors as one single capacitor, you will realize that because charge on each capacitor is Q, the resultant charge, if you imagine the entire thing as one big capacitor, you will realize that the effective charge on that one big capacitor is equal to Q only. It's because every capacitor has a charge of Q. The resultant charge on that one big capacitor is going to be Q. So I have V as Q divided by C effective, or the effective capacitance in series, is equal to V1. If you remember the first formula that you had learned, Q was equal to CV. If Q will be equal to CV, we can write V as Q upon C. So I can write V1 as Q divided by C1. I would have written it as Q1 by C1, but because charge is Q on every capacitor, it's okay to write this one as Q by C1, plus the one on V2 is Q by C2. The final Vn would be Q by Cn. You can just cancel out that Q, and what you finally get is the formula for effective capacitance of n capacitors connected in series. So if you are connecting n number of capacitors in series, you will realize that the effective capacitance, that is 1 upon Cs, will be given by 1 upon C1 plus 1 upon C2 and so on up till 1 upon Cn. That's how you get the capacitance when you are connecting all of them in series. Let's go ahead with connecting capacitors in parallel. So let's say you have connected n number of capacitors in parallel with each other, and because they are all connected in parallel, the potential difference across every plate of the capacitor or across all the capacitors will be the same. All these capacitors are connected across this battery of potential difference or EMF equal to V, and because EMF of the battery is equal to V, the potential difference across the plates of every capacitor will be equal to V. Let's consider the capacitance of the first capacitor as C1, the second one as C2, and the nth one as Cn. The charge developed on the first capacitor will be Q1, the second Q2, and the nth one will develop a charge of Qn. The total charge that you have generated is going to be Q1 plus Q2 and so on up till Qn. But you've learned that Q will be equal to CV. The total charge generated will be the total capacitance multiplied by the potential difference of the battery or the EMF of the battery. That should be given by Q1 can be written as C1V1, but because potential difference across every capacitor is the same, instead of V1 we can write it as V for every capacitor. So we will have Q1 written as C1V plus Q2 written as C2V plus Qn written as Cn into V. You can cancel off that V and finally have the resultant capacitance C as C1 plus C2 and so on up to Cn. So if you are connecting capacitors in parallel with each other, the effective capacitance will be given by the sum of all the individual capacitances. So these are two formulae that you are learning for connecting capacitors in series as well as parallel. See, it's definitely important to understand the concepts here, but if at all, when I was learning them for the first time, I did find a difficulty in learning them. So even if you are facing a difficulty in learning them, I would recommend that at initial stages, just remember the two formulae. And once you start imagining things more and more in capacitors, you will realize that the derivations have been done in a logical way and you will be able to grasp all those points. You will be able to imagine the derivations by yourself. And once that happens, you will be a bit more confident about capacitors. Just make a note of this formula as well as this formula. Remember this formula for capacitors connected in series and this one for capacitors connected in parallel. Make a note of it, and once you are done with that, we'll go ahead with the next concept. Let's go ahead with the fifth formula. The fifth formula, okay, before I give you that formula, just get back to the very first thing I had stated. If you take a capacitor and connect it to a battery, I had mentioned that the battery, if the EMF of the battery is V volts, then the battery will generate a potential difference on the capacitor which is also equal to V volt. It will do that by developing charges on the plates of the capacitor. So if the charge on this plate would be plus Q, the charge on this plate would be minus Q. The question is, how much time does it take for the battery to generate this potential difference on the plates of the capacitor? The answer is instantaneous. Whenever you connect a capacitor across a battery, the capacitor instantaneously charges itself with a potential difference equal to the EMF of the battery. The charges get developed instantaneously as long as there is no resistance in the circuit here. Okay, so let's consider the case of a resistance being in the circuit, but we'll look at the equation a little while later. For now, I said that the battery does the work of taking charges from one plate and putting it on the other plate. So whenever charges are being taken from one place and being put on the other place, there is some work being done, and I said that it's the battery who is doing that work. So the battery is doing work on the capacitor, and that is why some amount of energy is getting stored while you are charging the capacitor. So the energy stored in charging a capacitor, that's the fifth formula you're learning. The energy stored in a capacitor while you charge it is given by half CV square. Yes, there is a derivation for it, but like I said, because we are doing the formula, I am not getting much into the derivations. The energy stored in charging a capacitor is given by half CV square. You can start rearranging it with other terms. You can use the first formula here. You know that Q will be equal to CV. So you can write this as half into CV into V, and that CV can be written as Q. So you can write QV and say that the energy stored in charging the capacitor is half QV. Keep in mind I have written CV square as CV into V, and that CV is what I am replacing with Q. So we get half QV as the energy stored in the capacitor, which if we try to eliminate V, I can write V as Q upon C, and if you write V as Q upon C, you get Q square upon 2C as yet another formula for energy stored inside the capacitor. So this is a formula that you need to remember, that is work done while charging a capacitor or energy stored in a capacitor is given by these ways. The most commonly used is half CV square. Okay, now let's go ahead a little more over here. I said that it is the battery which is doing work in charging the capacitor. Let us say that the battery is doing 50 joules of work. In that case, the entire 50 joules of work is not going to be stored in the capacitor as the energy of the capacitor. When the battery does 50 joules of work, half of it will be stored in the capacitor and half of the other part will be wasted as heat energy, because electrons are flowing from here to here. There is some amount of energy being lost in the form of heat, and that energy lost in the form of heat is half of whatever work the battery has done. So if the battery has done a work of 50 joules, 25 joules has been lost as heat and 25 joules is the energy stored in the capacitor. My point is, half the work that the battery does is wasted as heat energy and only the other remaining half is getting stored in the capacitor as the energy of the capacitor. So when I say that the energy of the capacitor is half CV square, I am also claiming that work done by the battery is double of whatever this quantity is, and that would be CV square. You can further keep continuing writing this as QV and Q square upon C, but since you already know it, I will just end the equation right here. So that's what I need you to understand, that the work done by the battery, only half of it will get stored in the capacitor as the energy of the capacitor. Let's get back to my point. I said that whenever you are connecting a capacitor along with a battery, the capacitor will get instantaneously charged. But if I have a resistor in the circuit, now the capacitor does not get instantaneously charged. It takes a little time to get charged. So while the capacitor is getting charged, while the battery is taking electrons from here and giving out electrons from here to the negative plate, the equations that come into the picture go like this. During charging, so let's write the formula like this. During charging, the charge on your capacitor is increasing, and because the charge on your capacitor is increasing, the charge on your capacitor at any point of time will be Q, given by Q naught into 1 minus e power minus T upon RC. That's the formula which will get followed while the capacitor is getting charged. Like I said, Q is the charge on the capacitor at any time t. Q naught is the charge after a very long interval of time. So after sufficient time has passed, we can say that now the capacitor will be fully charged. Like I said that if the resistor was not there, the charging of the capacitor would be instantaneous. But if the resistor is there, the capacitor is going to take time for charging. And after a long time has passed, we can say that the capacitor will be fully charged. So when the capacitor is fully charged, Q naught is the charge on the capacitor at that point of time. So Q naught is the charge on the capacitor when it is fully charged. It is 1 minus e power minus t, that t is given at any point of time. So if I talk of the charge on the capacitor at 1 second, I have to put t as 1. If I want the charge on my capacitor after 2 seconds, I need to put t as 2, and so on. R is the resistor that you have connected. It's the resistance, something in ohms, and C is the capacitance of the capacitor. That's the equation that is going to get followed for a charge on the capacitor while it is being charged. Say for example, I want to find the potential difference on the capacitor. You can actually write Q as CV. Q naught will be given by CV naught. You know that Q will be CV. So Q is CV, Q naught will be CV naught. V naught is the potential V naught is the potential difference between the plates when the capacitor is fully charged. So I can write it as CV naught. The inner terms remain the way they are. You can cancel off that C and claim that V will be also following the same result or the same trend, the same formula, that is V. The potential difference across the plates of the capacitor at any time t will be V naught 1 minus e power minus t by RC. What about the time when the capacitor is getting discharged? If you disconnect the battery, and this was plus and this was minus, if you disconnect the battery and complete the circuit, now the charges will start flowing from here to here. That is, you will again get a current through the circuit, but this time because of the charges in the capacitor getting neutralized by combining with each other. So now the capacitor is going to start discharging, and during discharging the charge on the capacitor at any point of time will be given by Q naught into e power minus t by RC. The same result will be followed for potential difference, that is V will be V naught e power minus t by RC. These are certain equations you need to keep in mind for a case when you are connecting a resistor in the circuit where you were having a capacitor as well as a battery. So these are two equations, like I said, you need to keep in mind. Now have a look at these two equations. What if I put the value of t as RC itself? When I put t equal to RC, we say that t equal to RC is what we call time constant for the capacitor. In fact, not for the capacitor, we say t equal to RC, or RC is the time constant of the RC circuit. This is what we call an RC circuit. There's a resistance, there's a capacitor, we are calling it an RC circuit. The time constant for any RC circuit is equal to the value of R into C. Why so? Because if you put t equal to RC right here, the charge on the capacitor, you get it as Q equal to Q naught into 1 minus e power minus 1. The value of E is 2.71828 approximately. You can plug in that value out here and evaluate the numbers in your calculator. 1 upon 2.7 would be roughly 0.37, and 1 minus 0.37 will give you 0.63. So this would give you 0.63 Q naught. We can say that RC is finally the time that is required for 63% of the capacitor to get charged. If the final charge was 100 coulombs on the capacitor, then the time required for the capacitor to get charged to 63 coulombs is what the time constant is. The time constant for the RC circuit. It is basically the time required for the capacitor to get charged to 63% of the maximum charge on the capacitor. Okay, so that's what we mean when we say time constant. Now just like you've substituted t equal to RC in this formula, that is for discharging, substitute t equal to RC in the formula for discharging as well. So what you end up getting is Q equal to Q naught multiplied by e power minus RC by RC. So that RC by RC would be minus 1, e power minus 1 would be 0.37, so you get Q naught into 0.37. So this is where you can start defining the time constant. You can see that for charging, the time constant was the time required for the capacitor to get charged to 63% of the maximum value. So the time that the capacitor will take to get charged to 63% of the maximum charge that it can take is what you call the time constant. And similarly, if you consider the discharging equation, if you realize that in time equal to time constant, it's only 37% of the charge which is finally left on the capacitor. So you can say that while discharging, the time required by the capacitor to discharge to 37% of the total charge is what you call time constant. So in short, you define time constant in this manner. More than the definition, what you need to keep in mind is the time constant for any RC circuit is simply and simply the multiplication of R multiplied by C. If you know that, you are thorough with this concept, and expect sums in your JEE mains and advanced based on this, because like I said, if I were to set a JEE mains paper, this is one concept I would put a question on. Let's go ahead with the next formula. I hope you have made a note of all these things. If yeah, we'll go ahead with the next one. So just make a note of this. So here's the next thing. Say for example, I take one capacitor and the capacitance for it is C1. I am charging it to a potential difference of V1, and by doing so it is developing a charge of Q1. So C1, V1 and Q1 are the capacitance potential difference and the charge developed on the first capacitor. I have a second capacitor of capacitance C2, potential difference V2, and charge it has developed is Q2. And now I am connecting the two capacitors. If I connect two capacitors, or whenever you are connecting two charged bodies with each other, the charges will continue to flow between them till both of them achieve the same potential. So even over here, the charges will continue to keep getting exchanged till both the capacitors reach the same potential. I want to know what is the common potential that the capacitors are going to achieve. In doing so, what I need to assume that charges can never be destroyed. Charges, so the initial charge on the capacitors will be equal to the total final charge on the capacitors. The initial total charge I had was Q1 plus Q2. And let's say the final total charge I have is the charge on my first capacitor, which would be Q1 dash, which is different from the initial charge, plus Q2 dash, which is the final charge on your second capacitor. In short, I am saying that the total initial charge is equal to the total final charge, because charge is something we cannot destroy. So let's go ahead with Q1. You know that the formula for Q is given by C into V. So this would be C1 V1 plus C2 V2. Like I said, capacitance does not depend upon charge, neither does it depend upon voltage. If the capacitance here was C1, even after the charges rearrange themselves, the capacitance for this will still be C1, the capacitance for this will still be C2, but their potentials change. But I said that the charges are going to continue to get exchanged till they reach a common potential. And because the potential is common, the value of potential for both of them finally is the same. So the charge on this would be C1V plus the charge on this would be C2V, where that V is your common potential. So finally I can say that the common potential V can be given by C1V1 plus C2V2 upon C1 plus C2. Do not make a mistake of memorizing this formula. You don't have to memorize it. You have to understand the thing right here. If you understand the thing that charges keep getting exchanged till a common potential is achieved and you cannot destroy charges, then these are things you will be able to write down yourself. And not only this, the same principle can be applied in different kinds of setups. So if you stick to the principle, if you remember, if you get a grip on the principle, you can answer more number of questions. And if you learn the formula, if you memorize the formula, then the chances of a sum coming directly based on this formula are very less. So understand the working here, that's more important rather than memorizing the formula. Okay, so that's one thing about capacitors. I hope you have made a note of this. If yeah, we'll go ahead with the next concept. Now when it comes to a spherical conductor, I have said that for a metallic conductor, the charges will be existing only on the surface of the conductor. If you are storing charges on the surface of a conductor is also behaving like a capacitor only. Okay, it's not storing positive and negative charges, but you are storing charges on the surface of a conductor. So if I want to define something called capacitance of a spherical conductor, I would define it like this. You know that capacitance is given by Q by V. The potential on the surface of a conductor is given by the formula KQ by R, where R is the radius of the conductor. So if you replace that V with KQ by R, you can cancel a Q in the numerator and denominator, and you are left with C equals to R upon K. That K is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. What I'm trying to establish over here is that the capacitance of a spherical conductor is directly proportional to the radius. If you double the radius, the capacitance of a spherical conductor will get doubled. If you triple the radius, it gets tripled. So that's what you need to understand, that capacitance of a spherical conductor will be proportional to the radius. Keep in mind this result because it will be often used in questions. And if you're done with this, let's go ahead with one last thing in this video. Now, in this concept, what I'm trying to discuss with you is a case where in one case, you are connecting a capacitor with a battery and you are charging it. So if the EMF of the battery was V, you have generated a potential difference of V across the battery and some charge has been stored inside the capacitor. In the second case, you are charging a capacitor with a battery of EMF equal to V volt. So the potential difference you have generated is V, and in the second case you have disconnected the battery after charging the capacitor. The charge on the capacitor has been Q. Over here also it is Q, and the capacitance of the capacitor is C. The capacitance out here is C. The only difference is you have kept the battery connected in the first case, and in the second case you have disconnected the battery. If the capacitor had only air filled in between, then the value of K would be 1. You had capacitance as AK epsilon naught upon D. The value of this K will be 1 if it was a capacitor filled with air. Now say for example, I am putting a dielectric in the medium, a dielectric between the plates of the capacitor. If I put a dielectric in between the two plates of the capacitor, the capacitance will increase by K times. So there's a difference in capacitance you will see after putting a dielectric. The capacitance in the first case is going to become K times C, as well as in the second case it's going to become K times C. The question is, what happens to charge? The next question, what happens to potential difference? And what happens to the energy of the capacitor? Let's consider charge. See, when you say that you have disconnected the battery, there is nothing from where the capacitor is going to absorb more charge. So no matter whatever you do with the plates of the capacitor or with the region in between, the charge on the plates is going to remain what it is. So the charge in this case, in the second case, is going to remain Q like it previously was. In this case, if you realize the battery is of EMF V volt, no matter whatever you do with the things inside the capacitor, the battery will always keep charging the capacitor with the potential difference equal to V. So the potential difference in this case, no matter what you do over here, is going to remain V. Let's think of charge in this case. Now see, I said that the potential difference here remains the same. The basic equation is Q equal to C into V. If the potential difference has to remain constant, C is now increasing by K times. So this becomes K into C. For potential to remain constant, Q has to become K times. So Q has to become K times Q so that the potential remains constant. So the charge will become K times what it previously was. So the charge will now be KQ. Think over it a bit and you will realize this. In a similar way, you need to think for potential difference. It was Q equal to CV, but in the second case, that is in this case, the charge Q has to remain constant. C is becoming K times C. So for Q to remain constant, V has to become V by K. Only then Q will remain constant. So the potential difference between the plates drops down by a factor of K. And K, keep in mind, was the dielectric constant of the dielectric that you have put in between the plates of the capacitor. Let's go ahead with energy. This is where a tricky thing appears. So energy, you can write it in three different ways. The formulae for energy are half CV square, Q square by 2C, or you can say QV by 2. You can check up for these formulae in the list of formulae that you have written. I've made you write down these formulae just a couple of minutes back. For E, you should actually consider the formula half CV square. Well, that's because the potential difference is remaining constant in this case when the battery is connected. Because potential difference is constant, I can straight away claim that the energy stored is proportional to the capacitance. And because capacitance got increased by K times, the energy will get increased by K times. So if the previous energy was E, the current energy will become K into E. Think about energy here. Now in this case, that is in the second case, it is charge which remains constant. And because charge remains constant, we will prefer to use the second formula for energy and claim that energy is inversely proportional to the capacitance. The capacitance got increased by K times when you were putting a dielectric in the middle, and that is why energy, because it's inversely proportional to capacitance, will get decreased by K times. So the energy now will become E upon K. And that is one last thing I wanted to discuss in this video. I hope whatever contents I have covered in this video have been someplace somewhere helpful to you in your preparations. Thank you for watching guys, and like I said, I hope whatever I have taught was helpful to you.